So this will be Unit 1, 1.4, Solving Proportions. So in this section, we're going to be going back to kind of our solving equations. We talked about ratios and some of the triangle things. And again, this unit is starting to build up, doing some review to get our brain out of the dusty summer. But what we're looking at is triangle similarity. So we're kind of building up to these similar triangle ideas. So our goal today is just to be able to solve proportions. So I'm going to show you several examples of how we solve these. So to start out, what is a proportion? So a proportion is an equation that states two ratios are equal. So we're going to say something like A over B, so something compared to something, and C compared to D. Here's our two ratios. And a proportion says they've got to be equal. One of the things that we're going to use to solve this is called the cross product property or cross multiply. Maybe you've heard in the past where somebody would say cross multiply these. So what that says is that if I multiply this side by B, okay, and this side by B, they cancel out. So I'm left with C times B here. If I multiply this times D, do you see those would cancel out? And I'm left with A times D on this side. So I've lost the denominators on both sides, which essentially has made this crossover. C times B is what I'm left with here, and A times D is what I'm left with here. So if we look at this, the reason we call it cross multiplication is because what I'm going to do is cross out the denominator here, and I get C times B on this side. And it's equal to the cross of this side, A times D. So it comes from our inverse operations that says we don't really like that B. So I'm going to multiply by B to get rid of it. And whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. That's where I get the C times B. If I don't like the division here, I can also multiply. Get rid of it. Multiply it on the same side. There's my AD. Here's my CB. It's a quicker way, instead of doing all of this, to just go cross multiply. But that's where it comes from. So that's kind of our goal today, is to use this cross multiplication, cross product property, to solve for x, to use this to find a value. So on our first examples here, it says, solve each proportion using the cross product property. And if we need to, we're going to round to the nearest tenth. All right, so I'm going to cross here. I get 4 times 7 equals, cross here, I get x times 2. 4 times 7, I can simplify to 28. X times 2, can't do anything but bring down 2x. This is the cross product property, and now I'm just simplifying, trying to solve getting x by itself. The only thing that's keeping me from having x by itself is this multiplication, so I'm going to divide both sides by 2. As always, we can still check our work. 4 divided by 14 simplifies to the same thing that 2 out of 7 does. So those are proportional ratios, because they're two ratios that are equal to each other. All right, let's try number 2. We're going to cross multiply. It doesn't matter which one you started with. So even if you start top bottom or up down, we're still going to get the same 10 times x here, and we'll get the 19 times 12 here. So those are equal. I can't do anything with the 10x because one's a variable, one's a constant. And then 19 times 12 on the other side, I get 228. Okay, one more step to get x by itself, as my goal is to solve for x. When I divide this over, I'm going to get 0.8, which is to the nearest tenth, so I don't have to do any rounding. That is still the same exact answer. All right, so once we get back to no division, this is what we've been practicing as far as our first couple days, solving the equations day 1 and day 2. So now we're kind of moving into this. On 3 and 4, what's different here is that now we have an expression in the numerator, and in this one, the denominator. So we have x minus 1 divided by 6 equals 13 divided by 19. To cross multiply, I still have the 6 times 13. But when I cross this way, I want to use parentheses to group that x minus 1 as that entire numerator, which now sets me up for distributing here. So I want to make sure that I'm not writing the second part as 9 times x minus 1 because I might only see this piece. The 9 is getting multiplied to everything there. So I want to make sure that I'm giving that the parentheses and grouping that it needs. So if I combine 6 times 13, I get 78 and distribute here. 19x and 19 times negative 1 is minus 19. I'm going to add 19 over because now I'm solving, trying to get this by itself. So 78, and my inverse operation is adding 19 over. I get 97. Divide both sides by 19, and I am using my calculator. I didn't know this one right off the bat. So this is 5.105263.158. Round to the nearest tenth, so I look here. 0 doesn't bump this up, so I would just leave it as 5.1. I can still check this in my answers, but remember, be careful when we have an approximation. It's not going to be the exact same answer. On number 4, cross multiply, I get 5 parentheses x plus 4. That's a common mistake, is to forget it. And 17 times 19. Kind of looks like a heart. I'm going to distribute on the left-hand side, 5x from the first, and 5 times 4 is 20 on the second. 17 times 19, I get 323 for this quantity here. Inverse operations, minus 20, divide by 5. If it ends in 3, it's not going to divide evenly, so I'm using my calculator here. And I get 60.6, which is to the nearest tenth, so I don't need to do any rounding. Okay, on number 5, parentheses around anything that's not an individual value. 10 times 9 here, and 20 times the quantity 2x minus 9. 9 times 10, again, our goal is to distribute and combine where we can on each side. So I'm going to distribute and now use my inverse operations to move everything to the one side. Added the 180 and divide by 40. So 270 divided by 40, I get x is 6.75, which seems like a great answer, but the directions say round to the nearest tenth. So that's going to bump that up to 6.8. So when I plug this in, it'll be very similar to that value there. So 2 times 6.8 minus 9 is 4.6 here. So if I do 10 divided by 4.6 and 20 divided by 9, those should be pretty close to equal other than a rounding thing. All right, on 6 here. I'm going to put parentheses around this because it's not by itself, grouping those together, and cross multiply. 12 times 15 and 18 times 3x plus 4 for the other cross. 12 times 15 is 180. 18 times 3x is 54, with the x coming down. And distribute the 18 to the 4 is 72. I'm moving pretty quick when we have the kind of two-step problems left over here. So I'm subtracting, and I'm doing it mostly on my calculator. Instead of writing it down, I'm going, oh, subtract 72, and I put that in my calculator. And then when I see this, I go, oh, divide by 54. So I have that already saved in my calculator. So even though I'm doing those operations, I don't have to show this piece if I don't want to. Those are kind of our thinking thoughts. When something changes, I can tell what's happened. All right, we have two more here. So now we have, let's look at number 7, where we have x minus 20. So again, I'm going to put this in parentheses. Over 3 is proportional to, that is a second set of parentheses, x minus 11 over 18. So I'm going to cross and I get 3 and then parentheses x minus 11 and cross a second time, 18, x minus 20. I put the 18 in front just because I typically go left to right when I'm distributing, but x minus 20 times 18 would get me the same thing. I would just have to distribute the other way. All right, so I got to distribute. I have two things here. So I have 3x minus 33. And on the other side, I have to distribute as well. 18x minus 18 times negative 20, it's negative 360. So since I already brought down my negative, I bring down the 360. Variables on two sides. Okay, I'm going to subtract the 3x here and combine it on this side. So now I have negative 33 equals 15x minus 360. And this is back to where I have two more steps to get x by itself. So now I have add 360 over. So I'm going to put negative 33, add 360 in my calculator, and just write down what the total is. But I'm going to write it down correctly, 27. Divide both sides by 15. So 327 divided by 15, and I get 21.8, which is already rounded to the 10th. So I can bring my answer down. On the last one, again, we're going to have two quantities here that need to be distributed. So I have 6 times my cross of 3x plus 3 equals 7 times the quantity x plus 16. And distribute. 6 times 3, 18x. 6 times 3 without an x is just 18. And on the other side, 7x plus 7 times 16, that's where I need my calculator, 112. Variables on both sides. Again, I moved the smaller one. I'm a positive person. I like to stay positive here. And I get 11x plus 18 equals 112. 2 things away from getting x by itself. So now I can subtract 18 from 112 and divide by 11. And this time I got 8.54545454, round to the nearest tenth. 4 won't bump that up, so I'll leave it at 8.5. All right, so this is kind of the solving part of our proportions, kind of setting these things up, and we were going to do a lot of solving proportions. So if you have questions, email me, let me know. Thank you.